The rain fell softly against the window as Lily Chen stared at the diamond ring on her finger, remembering the day Marcus had placed it there. 3 years had passed since that moment. 3 years since she'd believed in fairy tales. Now, standing in the grand marble foyer of the mansion she'd never quite felt belonged to her, she wondered when everything had started to unravel. Lily had met Marcus Thornton at a charity event where she'd been volunteering, serving food to guests who wore watches worth more than her yearly rent. He'd been different then, or so she'd thought. While others barely glanced at the volunteers, Marcus had stopped to talk, asking about her life, her dreams. His genuine interest had felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. Their romance had been quick, almost breathless. Within 6 months, they were engaged. Within a year, married. Lily remembered her mother's worried face on the wedding day. Ruth Chen had pulled her aside and whispered, "Are you sure about this, sweetheart? His world is so different from ours." But Lily had been sure. Marcus had promised her forever. He'd held her hands and said, "I don't care about where you come from. I care about who you are." She'd believed every word. The first year of marriage had been beautiful. Marcus would come home early just to have dinner with her. They'd walk through the city parks, talking about everything and nothing. He'd introduced her to his business partners as the woman who changed my life. Lily had felt like the luckiest person alive. But somewhere around the second year, things shifted. Marcus started working later hours. Business trips became more frequent. When he was home, he seemed distracted, always on his phone, always somewhere else even when sitting right beside her. Lily tried to understand. Building a tech empire required sacrifice, she told herself. This was temporary. She'd decorated their home with personal touches, photographs of their happiest moments, hoping to remind him of what they had. She'd learned to cook his favorite meals, waited up late to greet him when he finally came home. But Marcus barely noticed anymore. The man who once couldn't wait to hear about her day now scrolled through emails while she spoke. One evening, about 6 months ago, Lily had gathered the courage to ask, "Are we okay, Marcus? You seem so distant lately." He'd looked up from his laptop with irritation flickering across his face. "I'm building something, Lily. Not everyone can spend their days doing nothing." The words had stung like a slap. She'd never asked for the luxurious lifestyle. She'd only asked for him. That night, lying in their king-sized bed with miles of emptiness between them, Lily had cried silently into her pillow. She'd wanted to call her mother to hear Ruth's comforting voice, but pride stopped her. She'd chosen this life. She needed to make it work. The months that followed were a slow descent into loneliness. Marcus stopped coming to bed at the same time. He stopped explaining where he'd been. Lily noticed new cologne, unexplained text messages that made him smile in ways he no longer smiled at her. She wanted to confront him, but fear held her back. Fear of the answer. Fear of losing the dream entirely. Then came today. A Tuesday afternoon in late autumn. Lily had been reading in the library, one of the few rooms in the mansion where she felt somewhat comfortable. The sound of the front door opening echoed through the halls. She'd glanced at the clock. 3 in the afternoon. Marcus never came home this early. Lily had set down her book and walked toward the foyer, a small smile forming despite everything. Maybe this was a good sign. Maybe he'd taken time off to spend with her. Maybe things could get better. But when she reached the top of the stairs, her heart stopped. Marcus stood in the entrance, but he wasn't alone. Beside him was a woman Lily had never seen before. Tall, elegant, dressed in a designer suit that probably cost more than the wedding dress Lily had carefully saved for. The woman's hand rested casually on Marcus's arm, and she laughed at something he'd said, the sound bright and confident. Lily's legs felt weak. She gripped the marble railing, unable to move, unable to breathe. Marcus looked up and saw her. For a brief moment, something flickered in his eyes. Guilt? Regret? But it vanished quickly, replaced by a cold hardness she'd never seen before. "Lily," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "Come down. There's someone I need you to meet." Each step down that staircase felt like walking toward her own execution. Her hands trembled. Her heart pounded so loudly she was certain they could hear it. When she reached the bottom, she stood there, waiting, though she didn't know what for. The woman extended a perfectly manicured hand. "You must be Lily. I'm Victoria Sterling. Marcus has told me so much about you." Her smile was polite but didn't reach her eyes. There was something proprietary in the way she stood beside Marcus, as if she already belonged there. Lily's voice came out barely above a whisper. "Marcus, what's going on?" She searched his face desperately for the man she'd married, for any sign of the person who'd once loved her. "Who is she?" Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "Victoria is my business partner. We've been working closely on the new expansion project." He paused, then added with devastating casualness, "She'll be staying here for a while. The project requires close collaboration." The words hit Lily like physical blows. Staying here. In their home. In the space that was supposed to be theirs. "You can't be serious," she breathed. "Marcus, this is our home." "Our marriage." "Don't be dramatic, Lily," Marcus said, his tone sharp with impatience. "This is a business arrangement. Victoria needs to be close to headquarters and we have plenty of space." Victoria's smile widened slightly, a predator sensing weakness. "I promise I won't be any trouble. You probably won't even notice I'm here." The statement felt like mockery. How could Lily not notice another woman living in her home, standing beside her husband with that knowing look in her eyes? Lily's throat tightened. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not yet. Not in front of this stranger who'd invaded her life. "You promised to love me forever," she said, her voice breaking despite her efforts. "You stood in front of everyone we knew and made vows. Was any of it real, Marcus?" For a moment, just a moment, his expression softened. But then Victoria touched his arm gently, and whatever vulnerability Lily had glimpsed disappeared. "People change, Lily," Marcus said coldly. "Dreams change. This is the reality now. You can either accept it or—" He didn't finish the sentence, but the implication hung heavy in the air. Lily stood there trembling as her world shattered around her. The man she'd loved, the future she'd imagined, the promises that had seemed unbreakable, all of it crumbling like sand. She looked at Victoria, who watched her with barely concealed triumph, then back at Marcus, who couldn't even meet her eyes anymore. "I accepted a simple life for you," Lily whispered. "I left everything familiar because you said we'd build something together." "And this is what you do? Bring another woman into our home?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "You'll have everything you need. Money, security, this house. Stop being so emotional about everything." But Lily wasn't crying about money or houses or security. She was mourning the death of love, the betrayal of trust, the realization that the person she'd believed in had never truly existed. Or perhaps he had once, but that man was gone now, replaced by someone she didn't recognize. As Victoria and Marcus moved past her toward the living room, discussing business matters as if Lily weren't standing there with her heart in pieces, she finally let the tears fall. Silent streams down her cheeks, each one carrying away another piece of the dream she'd held so carefully. She'd promised herself forever to a man who'd forgotten what forever meant. And now she stood alone in a mansion that had never felt like home, wondering how she'd find the strength to survive what came next. The first night after Victoria moved in was the longest of Lily's life. She'd locked herself in the guest bedroom, unable to bear sleeping in the master suite, knowing another woman was just down the hall. Through the walls, she could hear laughter, the clinking of wine glasses, Marcus's voice animated in ways it hadn't been with her in months. Each sound was a fresh wound. Lily sat on the edge of the bed, her phone clutched in her trembling hands. Finally, at 2 a.m, she called the only person who'd always understood her. Her mother answered on the second ring, alert despite the hour. Mothers always knew when their children were drowning. "Lily, baby, what's wrong?" Ruth's voice carried that mixture of concern and strength that only mothers possess. The dam broke. Through sobs, Lily told her everything. Marcus's distance, Victoria's arrival, the cold indifference in her husband's eyes. Ruth listened without interrupting, letting her daughter pour out all the pain she'd been holding inside. When Lily finally fell silent, exhausted from crying, Ruth spoke quietly but firmly. "Come home, sweetheart." "Come home right now. I can't," Lily whispered. "This is my marriage. I made promises, too." Maybe if I try harder, if I'm patient, he'll remember what we had. Lily Chen. Ruth's voice turned sharp. Listen to me carefully. Love should never make you feel this small. A man who truly loves you doesn't bring another woman into your home and expect you to accept it. That's not testing your patience. That's breaking your spirit. The words settled into Lily's chest, heavy and true. But she wasn't ready to accept them yet. Not completely. Give me a few more days, Mom. Please. Ruth sighed heavily. 3 days? If things don't change in 3 days, I'm coming to get you myself. Those 3 days became a special kind of torture. Victoria moved through the mansion as if she owned it, rearranging furniture, giving instructions to the house staff, sitting in the chair at the dining table that had always been Lily's. Marcus allowed it all, sometimes even encouraging it. Lily watched herself become invisible in her own home. Meals were prepared to Victoria's preferences. Marcus's schedule revolved around Victoria's meetings. When Lily tried to participate in conversations, they'd exchange glances and change the subject to business matters she didn't understand. On the second night, Lily found Marcus alone in his study. She'd rehearsed what to say, how to reach him. Marcus, can we talk? Really talk? He barely looked up from his computer. I'm busy, Lily. Please. She stepped into the room, closing the door behind her. I need to understand what's happening. Why you're doing this? What happened to us? Marcus leaned back in his chair, studying her with an expression that might have been pity. You want honesty? Fine. You were different when we met, Lily. Simple, yes, but there was something genuine about you. I thought that would be enough. He paused, his next words carefully cruel. But you never grew. You never adapted to this world. Victoria understands my life, my ambitions. She challenges me. You just exist here. Each word was a calculated strike, designed to hurt, designed to make her doubt herself. Lily's hands clenched at her sides. I supported every decision you made. I learned about your business, attended your events, became part of your world. You played dress-up. Lily, there's a difference between wearing the costume and actually belonging. Marcus turned back to his screen, dismissing her. Victoria belongs. Lily left the study with what remained of her dignity, but inside she was screaming. She'd spent 2 years trying to become someone worthy of this life, and he'd been judging her the entire time, finding her lacking. That night, she couldn't sleep. Around midnight, she heard footsteps in the hallway, then Marcus's door opening and closing. But they weren't his footsteps. They were lighter. Feminine. Victoria. Lily pressed her hands over her mouth to stifle the sob that threatened to escape. Her worst suspicions confirmed in the worst possible way. She grabbed her phone with shaking hands and called the one other person who'd been there through everything. David Park, her childhood friend who'd stayed in touch despite the distance her marriage had created. Lily? David's voice was thick with sleep but cleared instantly. What's wrong? Can you come get me? She whispered. Tomorrow morning. Early. I need to leave before I lose myself completely. I'll be there at 6, David said without hesitation. Pack what matters. Leave the rest. The third morning arrived with gray clouds and heavy rain. Lily had barely slept, but clarity had come with the darkness. She packed a single suitcase with clothes, photographs from before the marriage, and the few items that were truly hers. The designer dresses, the expensive jewelry, the luxury items, she left them all. They'd never been hers anyway. They'd been props in someone else's story. At 5:45, she descended the stairs for the last time. The mansion was quiet, everyone still sleeping. Lily paused in the foyer, looking at the space that had promised so much and delivered so little. She wasn't angry anymore. She was done. She wrote a single note and left it on the entrance table. You wanted someone who belonged in your world. I hope you find happiness with her. I'm going to find happiness with myself. David's car pulled up precisely at 6. He got out and hugged her without questions, taking her suitcase and helping her inside. As they drove away, Lily didn't look back. There was nothing behind her worth seeing anymore. Her mother's apartment felt smaller than Lily remembered, but it was filled with warmth the mansion had never possessed. Ruth held her daughter while she cried, stroked her hair, and promised that everything would be okay eventually. But how? Lily asked between sobs. I gave him everything. How do I recover from this? The same way you recover from any wound, Ruth said gently. One day at a time. And by remembering that his inability to value you says nothing about your worth. The following weeks were brutal. Lily had to learn how to exist again as herself, not as Marcus's wife. She'd lost herself so completely in trying to be enough for him that she'd forgotten who she'd been before. The girl who'd volunteered at charities, who'd loved painting, who'd found joy in simple things. David visited often, bringing coffee and conversation. One afternoon, sitting on Ruth's small balcony, he said quietly, "You know I always thought you deserved better than him." Lily turned to look at her old friend, really look at him. David had been there through everything: high school heartbreaks, college stress, family problems. He'd been happy for her when she'd married Marcus, despite something in his eyes suggesting he'd had reservations. "Why didn't you say something? Would you have listened?" David asked with a sad smile. "You were in love, or what you thought was love. What's the difference?" Lily asked bitterly. "Real love doesn't require you to become less of yourself. It encourages you to become more." David reached over and squeezed her hand. "That guy you married wanted a trophy, not a partner. You deserve someone who sees your worth, Lily, who celebrates it." 3 weeks after she'd left, Marcus finally called. Lily stared at her phone, watching it ring. Ruth and David both watched her, ready to support whatever decision she made. Finally, she answered. "Lily, where are you?" Marcus's voice held irritation, not concern. "You left without discussion. We need to talk about this properly." "There's nothing to discuss," Lily said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "You made your choice. I'm making mine. Don't be childish. Come home. We can work this out." "Work what out, Marcus? Your affair? Your complete disrespect for our marriage? Your expectation that I should just accept being replaced?" There was silence on the other end. "Then, Victoria and I—" "It's not what you think," Lily laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I don't care what it is. I'm done trying to earn love from someone who never truly offered it. I'm done shrinking myself to fit into your world. You can keep your mansion, your money, your new life. I just want my dignity back." "You're making a mistake," Marcus said, his voice hardening. "You'll regret this." "The only thing I regret," Lily said softly, "is not leaving sooner." She hung up and immediately blocked his number. David and Ruth erupted in proud cheers, and for the first time in months, Lily smiled genuinely. The divorce papers arrived 2 weeks later. Marcus was surprisingly generous with the settlement, perhaps out of guilt, perhaps simply wanting it over quickly. Lily took only enough to start fresh, refusing to profit from her pain. With that money, she opened a small art gallery in her old neighborhood, featuring works from local artists who, like her, were trying to find their voice. She started painting, again pouring all her heartbreak and healing onto canvas. The paintings were raw, honest, beautiful in their brokenness. One evening, 6 months after leaving Marcus, Lily stood in her gallery during an opening reception. Her mother was there, beaming with pride. David stood beside her, having helped hang every piece. The small space was filled with people genuinely interested in the art, in the stories behind each piece. "You did it," David whispered. "You found yourself again." Lily looked around at the life she'd rebuilt from scratch. It wasn't luxurious. There was no marble or chandeliers, but it was hers, authentically and completely hers. "No," she corrected softly. "I found someone better than who I was before. Someone stronger." That night, as she locked up the gallery, Lily's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. She almost deleted it, but curiosity won. It was from Victoria. "He's not who you think he is. I'm learning that now. You were smart to leave." Lily stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Victoria's journey wasn't hers to be part of. Some lessons people had to learn themselves. Walking home through the city streets, passing cafes and bookstores, and the ordinary magic of everyday life, Lily realized something profound. Marcus had promised her forever, But he'd given her something more valuable. He'd forced her to find her own strength, her own worth, her own voice. She'd survived the breaking, and in putting herself back together, she'd created something more beautiful than she'd ever been before. Not because someone else completed her, but because she'd learned to be whole on her own. The rain had stopped. Stars appeared between the clouds, and Lily Chen, the simple girl who'd once believed she needed a wealthy husband to be happy, walked forward into a future she was creating for herself, one brave step at a time. She'd promised Marcus forever. But she'd made a more important promise now, to never again lose herself in someone else's story. Her own story was just beginning, and this time, she was both the author and the hero.